Okay, so now we get down to the feature of the night. Richard Ford is going to do inside-out ornaments, and since we're going to be learning how to do inside-out ornaments, it's a good segue into perhaps you want to practice at home, and those ones that you practiced on at home, you can bring in and give to Norm for the read. Richard.
Oh, you have good ones too.
They were good ones too, yeah. It's all yours.
Okay, well, welcome. The last meeting was Dave, I believe, and he spoke a lot about collets. Well, I use collets quite a bit, and this is something that he didn't tell you about. So, you all know you fit the collet in the nut first. But I took my one-way safe drive and I turned down a little section of it here so it fits in the collet. So when I have my collet chuck in, I can mount a center, drive center, without taking it out. Just a convenience, just another use for collets. Oh, that's the wrong way. And this is when we discovered the first thing I forgot was my collet chuck key, so we'll just do it by hand. Now, traditionally, people have made inside-out turnings by using 4 separate pieces of wood, square wood, and then they hold them together somehow, and this would represent that. There's 4 pieces of wood here, and then they're just held together, in this case with tape. Some people use tie wraps on them to hold them together, like pull it tight. Some people put paper glue between them. Some people just use a little bit of CA glue down at the end. Other people make like a jam chuck that will fit on each end, a disc on this end with a center in it, and a jam chuck on this end. So they hold it with the 4 pieces together, turning it back into a solid piece, and then they will turn a profile of some kind, and then they will take it apart and spin each block around 180 degrees, put it back together, and glue it together permanently with wood glue, so that inside, what was outside is now inside, is a profile, a hollow in there, that they turn down to make an ornament. Well, another way of doing it, and one advantage of doing that is if you want to use dissimilar color woods. If you wanted a dark wood, a light wood, a dark wood, or red, blue, green, and yellow, whatever, you can have the 4 pieces of wood and have in your ornament 4 different colors, or 2 different colors, or whatever. So that's pretty much the traditional way. The way I'm going to show you today is a little different. And the first thing we're going to do, this is a solid piece of wood. Now it has to be square. You have to have a good 90-degree angle on the corners, because these corners are going to end up being on the middle and glued together. So if they're not square, you're not going to have a good joint. It will probably glue, but you'll probably see the glue joint in it. And the first thing we're going to do is turn a cove in it that will become the inside profile. Now, what I tend to do is take 1/3 of the length of the piece of wood, and I add 1/2 inch on, and I put a mark. And then I'll put 2 lines across it that are 1/4 inch less than the thickness of the square. Now, what I'm talking here, these are my notes, and these are the steps that I take, and this is posted on our website. If you go to hints and tips, you know, along the top there's the little thing. You go to hints and tips, this is there, you can download it, so you don't have to try and take notes or remember what I'm talking about, because most of it is going to be in there. So, we'll start off, we'll make one of these. Oh, might as well use this piece. So here, now I should tell you before I forget, the other thing that's important is that it is square, that it's the same dimension, and that your centers are right in the middle. Because when you're spinning this and you're turning, that profile you put in there, you want it to be equal distance in from each corner and each side, so that when you turn them around and they're in the middle, that profile is running true. So you have to start with a good square piece of wood. Plus you want a good surface here, because you're going to joint that, going to glue that. Oh. I think that'll be tight enough. We hope. Who's sitting in line? Oh, it's okay, it's Yogi. Okay. Now, when I measured in a third of the distance, this is 7 inches, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 7 inches. So a third of that is 2 inches and a third, 2 and a third, and then I went another ½ inch and put a mark. And then I took that mark and I went an equal distance either side of it to a dimension that is 1/4 inch less than the thickness here. But I only put 2 lines on because, as you saw, if you have 2 lines on, you can see it when it's turning. What you may want to do face shield here somewhere, is I had a haircut. Quite a haircut. Now, what you don't want to happen is for the wood to splinter a corner off, because this corner on the outside corner is going to end up being the center where you glue it together. If you do happen to chip a corner off, and you can find it, and you can glue it back exactly where it was, that's fine, because it's going to be in the middle again anyway. So you can recover a little bit if you get it. But what you may want to do is just cut in like as if you're making a pommel. Sort of break the just to lessen your likelihood of chipping. Small one here somewhere. Yeah. Bowl gouge, my favourite tool. One of my favourite tools. I got lots of favourites. So, when we turn this down, I would say the maximum diameter that you want in the middle is 2/3 of this size here. This is 1.5 inches square, I believe, 1.5 inches. Yes, right on 1.5 inches. So the minimum size I want in the middle of that cove is 2/3 of that, which is 1 inch. I don't want to go any smaller. And the reason you don't want to go any smaller is, well, I don't want to go any smaller, because initially we're going to turn down, this will be the bottom of the cove. Then we're going to cut it, and we're going to spin it around and glue it back together. So now this is the only wood that is supporting that. Here is these pieces. Now as you start to turn them, you can see that if your cut was perfect, and if you had a very narrow cut, you're going to end up with this much wood supporting it in the middle. But if, like most of us, you're off a little bit somewhere or other, you're more likely to only have this sort of amount available. So that's why I say don't go more. If you go a little less, that's fine. But don't go more than 2/3 of this thickness in the diameter in the center. So what we'll be looking for is something 1 inch or more in the center of that cove. It seems to work out normally to be fairly straightforward. You know, it looks round, so. You think of the thing, on these edges on the side here, you want to go in straight, like straight in and around, because when you spin these pieces over, in the middle they'll be straight, and you'll want to turn a sphere. If you don't go in straight, you go in on an angle, that means the shape on the outside would have to have a similar angle, and it won't be a sphere, it will be a longer, and if that's what you want, that's great too, but we're not down to the inch yet, but we're not far off, so I'll just smooth it out. So most of you have seen these before, my little smoothing and finishing scrapers, and I pretty much use them on everything. Just held level, right in the center of the, well, it doesn't have to be held level. What really has to happen is, wherever the tool rest is, you want to point it towards the center. So it could be like that, or it could be like that. You're just going to point it towards the center of your piece, your work piece.
So that's a negative rake scraper, right?
Yes, yes, it is, yes. See, it's 40 degrees either side.
It's the best tool I got in my shop.
Thank you.
I use that all the time, almost everything I do.
It is a surprisingly good little tool. I love it. And I use it on pretty well. Big bowls even,
Yeah.
everything. outside, inside of the bowl. The other end has this sort of shape, so if you're doing something that's flat, it's good for that.
Fantastic.
The other thing about this is when you sharpen it, you notice I have just a little mark here on the top. That's the top for me. I have two of them. I know the guy who makes them, so
Good idea.
I got a deal, yeah. And the reason I got two is I don't have to keep changing which side the burr is on. So this is the top, so I'm always going to do my last sharpening, touch up, from the bottom up. So I'm pushing up a burr. And the same on this end. This is the top, got a little mark on it. And I'm going to do my last sharpening, pushing it up. And that way it cuts fairly nice. There, it's not a bad surface. If anybody wants to see it, you're more than welcome to come and look. Now I finish it in my normal way. Just have a piece of sandpaper in there somewhere. And 240. 120. 180.
Must be a 40 in there somewhere.
We'll go rough 180.
I can get you some finer grit if you want.
No.
Just down in, no?
Oh, that's finer, maybe. One piece,
300? 320?
320, yeah, maybe 320. What I'm doing is there's little fuzzes on the corner here. As this is going to end up being on the inside and you're going to glue it, I'm just taking them off. Same on the other side. Okay. My popsicle stick's one of my favourite tools as well for getting next to little things that bite your fingers. I'd rather it bit the popsicle stick. Did you put a piece here, Gary,
In
somewhere?
those boxes.
Oh,
That
okay.
box,
Yeah, I see the whole box there, yeah.
Just check to make
I
sure.
couldn't
because
see
they don't
that,
necessarily
yeah.
always get put back and forth.
And of course we always have to do a little orbital hand sanding. If we diffuse those scratch lines, we can't see them. They're still there, it's just that they're not all in line together, you know, to reflect the light back to you. Yeah. So,
Have you ever tried a drum sander on a drill, handheld drill for sanding out those coves?
yes, the coves, I don't have one that small, but I've used it on bowls and things, the power driven and the ones that are driven by the paper rubbing on the surface.
You may be thinking I said disc, but I'm thinking of actual drum sander.
Oh! No. No, I have not. Paper.
That,
My fine sandpaper. You hold it in a drill, do you? You ever do that?
well, Gary, you know what I'm talking about, Lee Valley sells the kit.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's a cylinder that's got an axle at one end, you chuck in your drill,
Yeah,
and there's a little sanding sleeve that goes over it.
yeah.
So, that would have the,
Yes.
that would be going in the direction to
Yes.
sand with the grain.
Yes, it would, wouldn't it? Might be a good idea.
Well, it might be a bad idea, that's why I asked if you
Maybe.
tried it.
This of course is Nova Silk, which we all use and love. Oh, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have put this on yet. This is Nova Silk, but I should have put sanding sealer first. I usually put sanding sealer first. But the beauty of this product is you can do it any which order you want almost. You put the sanding sealer there. I've gone back to the sanding sealer just so as I can show you what I normally do. Sanding sealer first. That's my sanding sealer. The formula's in the same place on the website, Hints and Tips. %50 shellac in the can. Zinza shellac, pre-mixed, ready to use. And 50% methyl hydrate, or alcohol you can't drink. Okay. Then normally I put 2 minutes in the mix. 50% shellac, 50% boiled linseed oil.
You getting any of that, Yogi?
Yeah.
What's that? Did you get some, Yogi?
Wax is much better.
Sorry if you did. Let's speed it up and see if we can spread it even more. See, it's much better that this hits those corners of my fingers. See that paper coming off here? Okay, for this, well, that's a good enough finish. So, it's not a bad finish. So that's going to be, on an ornament, that's going to end up being the inside surface here. And that's what we're trying to make. Maybe you want to pass that around, have a look at it while we go on. So at this point, the next thing I do, I can find my dividers, there they are. I find on 2 adjacent sides, I'd mark a center line down through it. There, so that little mark I've made is right in the middle. Make that a little more visible just by spinning a pencil in it. And we're going to transfer that line along. because that's our cut line. We're going to take this solid block, and I usually go to my bandsaw. Mainly because it's a thinner cut line. I mean, you could cut it by hand if you're good enough. Cut it on your table saw. You're just going to have a thicker, unless you have a very thin blade, of course, like it, you're going to have a thicker cut line. Now, the place that's most important is right in the middle of this cove here. That's where you want to make sure that when you're making your cut, you're accurate here. The rest of it, somewhere near, doesn't really matter. It's here that it counts. Because this is your weakest point. So you want to make sure when you cut through here, through the middle, that you're cutting right through the middle as close as you can. Take your time. So I do that on two adjacent sides, like that. And I go to the bandsaw, and I cut down the line until I get to within about ½ an inch of the end here. Then I spin it over, and the other line that I put on there, I cut down that one. I cut all the way through, and then I cut the other two. That can go the route. And so when I cut it with the bandsaw, this is one that I've cut with the bandsaw.
Through the magic of television. Boom.
Yeah, well, yeah. I stopped them both just there, just so we stayed together. But the plan is to cut right through them when you've done that. When you've cut through them, the outside edge, you butt them together into pairs, with the outside edge here and the outside edge glued. Okay, so you have them on some flat surface, and put glue on them and rub them together, and you line up, this surface must be flat, and you line up the edge of the cove at the two ends here. So that now you can see what was the outside has now become the inside. And here's the other one. The next thing I do is to cut with a Dremel, just make a little groove in the center there, right along the glue line. This is after the glue is dried, of course. I'll put a little groove in there, and a little groove in the other half, and I glue in something, a little Christmas tree or a little ball or something or other, into one side, let it dry enough that it stays together. Then I'll glue the two of them together. And now I'm going to line up the glue line on each end and the sides of the cove on the two pieces. And you can see in this case, this one, I didn't cut through the middle very good. You can see but it's not going to matter. The important thing is that those glue lines are completely lined up and that your cove are lined up top and bottom. So we glue this together, clamp it, I leave it overnight then. And I end up with something like this, glued up into a block. See a little Christmas tree inside there somewhere. And then, right where those two glue lines cross, I put a center. And what I'm in the habit of doing, I have a very small center drill, just sitting in my drill press, and I'll just, after I've made the mark with a browel, after I've found the center right in the middle of the two glue lines, I will go to my drill press, run it, and just put it up. And just make this deep enough that it suits my centers that I'm using. I always have this fear, although probably the glue is the strongest thing at this point, of when you're pushing that center in, that it will split it open, you know. But it never has. Anyway, so now you've got this. Next thing is, put this between centers. Now you start to see, I think, in this area here, it's your weak area. It's the weak part of this whole procedure. So what I want to do is put a tenon here. It'll go in the collet chuck. Then I'll mount this in the collet chuck with the center on this end, and I'll proceed from this end and turn it down. So the first thing is to put a tenon on this end for a 3/4 inch collet. So this is a little piece of steel I have with different diameters on it. So I can set my calipers. This is 3/4 inch, this outside one. So I get a feel for when the calipers are set correctly. That just allows any little irregularities in it to kind of even themselves out. Any little backlashes that are anywhere. So now I have a feel for what a 3/4 inch tenon should feel like on here. And I'm going to put it down on this last 1/2 inch. That's what that 1/2 inch was for, when I said you go 1/3 of the distance plus 1/2 inch. That's to give me a little material for the collet. Oh, I need a key. Maybe that's it there. Oh yeah. I'm still using David's handles. These handles, I really like them a lot. Different configurations. I've got one that has a collet arrangement in it.
Do you have a good way to store all those handles?
I'm going to have a better way soon, but at the moment I don't know. I put them in the box here when I bring them. And I did bring to show to David a handle that's made by Simon Hope along the same lines, and he has collet heads in them, and he sells them in packets of 3/8, 1/2 inch, 3/4, or 5/8 rather. And I brought it to show David because I thought it's something he could do to his handles, and it would be a very good match, I think, to use these heads in his handle. So he's going to think about that. But it may be something he shows us at a later date. This is just a little round screw. Getting down close. Just a very small radius cutter with no flute on it. Just a flat top gouge really. I'm sure you've all seen me do this before, to size a tenon. You have to be able to catch well to do that. Just take a pencil, put it in each of those grooves. So now they make a really nice witness, so that when we take that down, the size we can see when we're getting close. See how narrow that's got there? Can you see it now? There, we're at size there in the middle. Yeah. Just put a little chamfer on the front. So if you hold your mouth the right way, that should fit.
Is that metric, Richard?
It's 3/4 inch. It is metric. It would measure something in metric.
I said in the length before, you said the half-inch for your sign, that looks longer than half-inch.
No, 3/4. It should be 3/4. I should have a 3/4 collet here. Oh, half-inch, I see. Yes, but I'm not going to put it all the way in. Because I've got to turn down to this to finish it. And I like to have a little spare material. So there, it's just a nice fit in the 3/4. I'll just go into about there, probably about half-inch, Edmund. He's always keeping his eye on me. And we'll bring up the text up. Now, I don't know if you noticed on that, well, one of the things that Simon Hope did was he put O-rings around it. Right, brilliant idea. Because it really helps you grip it. So I should put some O-rings on this, and I don't need a wrench anymore. I can do it by hand. Bingo! Now remember, this is a weak point, so you've got to be a little careful how much you tighten this up. You can always get an idea by turning the center. You feel the friction, so you know you're tight enough and not loose. So now, I'm going to leave this as it is and start work on this end, because I want all the strength I can get here for removing the bulk of the material down here. Now you could use whatever tool you like using for doing this. You could use a roughing gouge. You're still only going to take sort of light cuts. Now you can see that this one, when I glued it up, it was quite off-center there on one point. They're not perfect. But it doesn't matter once you start turning here, and your center was right on the cross of the two glue joints, so now everything goes back to center, and hopefully this little hollow in here is running true as well. Come on. line here, and that's just about where the inside edge of that hollow is. It's a little bit of a guide. Back to my little bowl gouge. You saw me grab that. It didn't cut my hand to pieces because I took a file and I softened all those radius, all those little edges on it, because I know sooner or later I'm going to touch it. At this point you start having to stop and have a look every, quite frequently, because it's a little tricky. We're not too far away around the bottom there now. And you have to remember that you cut a little groove in the middle of there, you put that little tree in or ornament, so you can't go too deep here because you'll run into that area. So right up close to it, I'm probably getting about as close as I want to be here. doesn't seem particularly sharp. I have a bigger one here somewhere. Can you use that? That's a little better. Now if I was just holding it between centres at this point, I would start to get pretty nervous. But the fact is holding it in a collet trap here gives me a little more confidence down here that I can actually go through that. We no longer have any kind of drive here. I'll just finish off that. Support a little bit with my hand. Fairly well supported anyway. Now, I'm using a collet chop, but you could be using a regular chop too. Little sanding seal. Now at home I would be turning faster. Just I don't want to monkey with the belts, and you do need to come down to this speed for sanding and things. So. Little sanding sealer, little lower silt. Because I'm not going to come back and touch this point again. And a little 2-minute finish on it. You can be as fussy as you want. This is what we call a soft touch, and we use them for many things. And it has a 3/4 inch thread in the bottom
Richard,
here.
can you put your hands
That's
down
right.
a little bit? So
I'll move the camera up. Got it.
Sorry about that. This little soft touch, 3/4 inch thread in it, which will fit the one-way or the Powermatic live center. Also have a stub for it over here that I can put it on. It will run true in the color, and I can turn a shape on it to use on the live center. So what I've got in this one is a little hole in the middle. Yeah. Little hole in the middle that will go over this point now on the so I can support it even though it's a point. And again, adjusting the tension just so we're just supporting it there. I now have support again down here on this end by using that. Now you could turn one to go over a regular kind of center that you had. You just turn a hole in it that would fit over there. Turn whatever you want on this end. We put nuts in them. Originally used to make them just by putting a tacked hole in the wood and hardening it with CA glue. But eventually they deteriorate and they're not very good. They're not repeatable. By putting a steel nut in, it's very repeatable. This particular one I use for making angels. And this shape here fits underneath the angel in the cutout hollow, and it will last a long time. If it gets out of whack a little, I've only got to touch it, you know, to touch it up a little bit. Oh, onwards and upwards. Now I'm not going to fiddle with this too much for this demo, but of course you would make this as nice as you want, you know. This is just to show you the method, and so you can do it this way or however you like. You can see I'm still a little ways away from the, but it's, if you look at each one, they're all very similar. So I must be somewhere near the center with that hollow. If you do happen to get a catch when you're doing this, it'll probably just go somewhere. But you have the method, you can start again. Let's see, it's fogging up. And we're getting closer.
asking you that.
That's better.
Now on this side, it's not as weak as it was when I was over here, because here I'm supported through here, through this material. But it's when you go through here and you're cutting over here that the strength of this becomes more important.
I'm just gonna try and get in
Okay,
a little closer and like.
you okay?
Yep. Good.
Now at home I will be over at the grinder about now, just touching this up.
You're looking for this?
Yeah. Still a little ways to go. Well, one advantage of this one is it has a nice sharp point. getting pretty close now. When we ordered that handle I showed you earlier, Edmund and I also ordered these negative rake scrapers from Simon Hope. I could only get the elastic band off. They have,
Here, I'll
there you go.
zoom out.
They have a high-speed steel replaceable bit in them, and they are negative rake scrapers. And I haven't used mine very much, but I know Edmund has used his on Bravery bee boxes, and they work really well, really nice. They're almost as good as my little cutter. I would say they're almost as good as this. Almost. The other one has a round bit in it. Now, you might ask the question, as we guessed before we got them, would this round cutter fit in this handle and this one fit? Yes, it's the same. This is the same holder for the two cutters. But just thought I'd show them to you, and I'll use them on this very delicate little piece here. You can see it's maybe less than 1/8 of an inch thick in here now. So you better do a good job.
You ready, Yogi? Okay, buddy.
Negative rate, sharpen. I do them. I don't do them Simon's angle. I do 40 degrees, 40 degrees, but I retain his long edge on the top. But they have a nice bulk to them, so and it's a pretty good finish on there too. Haven't quite cleaned it all up, and I would keep going away, but I don't think for this demo that I have to finish this one particularly. More important that I show you the method so that you can do it, so we can fill Norm's wreath there. Because I know the manufacturer, I get two, one each direction. You see, although it's a negative rate, it does take a nice little fine shading. Now, we just want to do a little ball or something on this end here. Now, a little bit before I got to here, I would have sanded all this and used my sanding sealer and Nova Silk and 2-minute finish, but you all know how to do that. Brave as I am. Use my Canadian Tire one. When that one stops turning, when this one's turning, I think I'm through. There, just remains to hand finish the top. Drill a little hole in it, and the one I passed around earlier, the first one, earlier on, I took Don's idea that I saw years ago, where you drill a hole in it and you take a piece of string and tie a knot in it, a loop, that you can just push the knot down in the hole, and then you put some wood glue in there and push it in and just leave the string sticking out. Are there any questions? Any suggestions?
Suitable types of wood?
Pardon?
Suitable types of wood?
Maple's a very good wood, I think. That one, the pieces I've been passing around are red maple, which is a little bit soft. So hardwood, birch, beech, maple. Cherry's always nice, yeah, lovely. And holly, if you can get it, you know.
Richard, you left some DNA on there.
It's mudwood.
Oh, is it? Yeah, that Simon Hope cutter there, give me a little cut here. Yeah, just a little cut. Well, that's it for me. What's the time? 8 o'clock. Okay.